And you are watching another Blewett Blitz film review. He has that ability to, trust me, he definitely does. Just his ability to catch balls outside of his frame, his leaping ability, his ability to hang in the air, his yak ability, it's all there. Lowers his helmet, low man wins, bang, rocks a guy.
Hall running free, Brees Hall inside the 10, he's gonna score!
The corners all do their job. You know, if you look at the picture right here, lock.
3rd and 1. Stevens always drilled. What a great defensive play.
I don't try to Monday morning quarterback any of the reviews. I try to be honest with a lot of things. And you are listening or watching to another Blewett Blitz film review, or actually film review edition of Blewett Blitz Live, Kyle. I'm very, very excited for this upcoming week. I don't know, actually, we just kind of got on right before the stream. I didn't really have time to talk to you. That's my bad, Kyle, so I apologize for that before the stream. But this Monday night, are you going to be there at 3 o'clock waiting in line, or when am I
3 o'clock? Certainly not, but hopefully a couple hours before the game, though, but not 3 o'clock.
I'm only slightly disappointed, but yeah, I'm really excited for the game. I actually put up a tweet saying I'm kind of disappointed in the seats and how much they've sold. But apparently, you can look at Ticketmaster and you can switch up between resale and how many actually have sold. So I guess a lot of people buy and then resale at the last second for a lot more money. So I get that. But I'm really looking forward to obviously the noise, Kyle. And I know some people feel about, obviously you're hearing the call on Twitter to get in your seats at 7:30 by Fireman Ed and all that stuff. So I know some people are kind of they have the attitude of, oh, well, it's my seat, so let me do what I want with my seat. I paid money for it kind of deal. But in my mind, we should all be really freaking excited for this game. So let's be there for the national anthem. Let's be there for the intros. Like as soon as they get the ball, 100% capacity, not, 80% with 5%, 10% trickling in slowly, all that crap. That first Bills drive, everybody needs to be in their seats. So, even if it's not necessarily at 7:30, I get wrapped up a little bit late, but by 8 o'clock, I at least be in the seats, So, and again, at the end of the day, if you want to tell me to go F myself because you're going to do with what you will with your money, I get it. But I think the call is kind of right, Kyle, to be in your seats pretty early for this one. We should be really excited.
Yeah, I think so too. There's this old argument that, do the fans have the right to boo? Are they obligated to cheer and all that kind of crap? And it's some of the people who are like, oh, I paid for this, it's my money, type of thing. I can do what I please. It's yeah. And yeah, should the team earn your respect and your cheer and your fandom and all that? And it's well, actual games haven't been played this year. And that's obviously the real thing. I mean, there was that whole Salah quote and he's I don't want to play hard. I want to, fuck you up. And I think he should have added to that whole thing. I want to win too, because winning is really the purpose of it. But, I think at least in the off season, I think the Jets kind of they made a huge gamble in passing up on Carr, who is a franchise quarterback, whether you think he's good or not, or great, he is. They passed up on him to wait for Rodgers. And then they could have, obviously got Carr for zero in terms of draft capital. And they gave up a lot of draft capital to get Aaron Rodgers. And so far, when you look at how good of a leader he's been and the fact that he took a pay cut, it looks like the gamble has really paid off, and it was a good gamble to take. And so that right there, just that one thing, but there's other things as well. At least from an offseason perspective, the team has earned your right for week 1 for you to cheer for them. Right now, if they start stinking it up the first 3 games, whatever, by all means, boo them, but for week 1, Monday Night Football, when was the last time the Jets have hosted a Monday Night Football game?
I don't know. Jesus, I can't even think about it. The last Monday Night Football game I remember being at was the Bears. And what year was that? It was whatever that Bears game was. It was a game where
Geno Smith versus Jay Cutler.
Yeah, I think that was it.
That was the 2014 season, I believe. I think it was Geno's second year. So 2014 season.
I could be completely wrong. There could be a random Colts game in there or something like that thrown in there that I just don't remember.
Yeah, that Colts game Monday Night Football that you went to, that was in Indianapolis.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about a random home game, a Thursday night game I might have missed or something.
That was a Thursday night game. I think that was towards the end of Todd Bowles' tenure. The Colts absolutely stomped the Jets. If you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about that one.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when it was, but the last one I remember was the Bears, and that was the game. I don't know if it was Demario Davis who sacked Jay Cutler, and then David Harris picked up the ball and ran it for 6, or vice versa. But that happened, and of course the ref blew it dead, and the Jets lose by however many points at the end of the game. 4 or 3 points. So that was just added to the list of terrible games we've been at, Kyle. The Pats game, we've been at quite a few bad ones already together, and that's not even thinking about Tom or Vinny, some of the games we've been
We
to.
haven't
So
been to a good one together yet.
no, we really haven't. So we'll see. But yeah. So I obviously want to like soak it in. I just don't want it to be like last year, obviously, and the years before that, like last year going to the Lions game, the Jaguars game. Like I'm really excited to just go root them on. Hopefully they fucking win. Go to Dallas, they win that game. Like why not? Why not the Jets this year? So let's be excited until they make us not excited. We've never really had a team like this to root for, right, Kyle? Like I know a lot of people kind of compare this team with the 2010 teams. And I really did not even expect to take it to this avenue, but we are here now because we kind of know the 53-man roster. Obviously, considering what you felt and kind of looking back on 2010 with obviously a more intelligent eye than how you reacted to the team in 2010. Is this team better than that team, or where do you kind of stand against with those Jets and their chances versus this team and their chances?
It's a very good question. At that point, we were entering Rex in the second season, and it's like, well, how good of a coach is Rex really at that point? Salah's entering year 3, and we're obviously not sold on him at all. He gives some good speeches, and players like him and stuff, and he seems to have a pretty good eye for talent, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's a great coach to this point. So coaching, you could almost say that 2010 had a superior coach and maybe coaching staff. Offensive line's obviously better 2010. Receivers, Braylon, Santonio, Kachuri, you could very well. I mean, like they didn't have like the legit superstar like Garrett Wilson could be, but you could argue that the receivers are better there. Running backs, I think you'd have to say that overall this group of running backs is definitely better. Defense,
yeah.
Defense, there's definitely, so you really had one real big time stud in Revis. Now the defense is good overall, but a lot of it you attribute to scheme. And who's the other like big time Pro Bowl All Pro stud on that 2010 defense?
Yeah,
it's not David Harris. It's not Sean Ellis.
Revis, and it was a lot of blitzes.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think I would give the nod to the defense, especially when you think of all the depth on the defensive line and the fact that they actually have edge rushers and you don't have to manufacture pressure. I don't like the fact that DJ Reed said, the 85 Bears comment, but I do think that this defense has a higher upside for sure.
I don't know if you have those people in your life, but like I have those people who obviously in my family and people I just know who obviously follow the quotes and stuff like, the Jets are getting cocky, the 85 Bears and all this stuff. Like, let them be excited. It is what it is. But I get not liking the comment, but obviously the 2010 team, the only thing that really blows it out is what the offensive line, Kyle, and then maybe I get maybe arguing, Braylon and Santonio Holmes over Garrett and Lazard as your top 2. Okay, we can have that type of conversation, but I don't think either one of Braylon Edwards or Holmes were nearly what Garrett Wilson can be, this year. I think he could legitimately be a guy who gets 1,500 yards and is talked about like a top 5 receiver.
But the big thing is you're comparing a bottom of the barrel quarterback, starting quarterback versus a top 5-ish quarterback this year, which not everyone is expecting Rodgers to be top 5, but I wouldn't at all be shocked. And it seems that some people are starting to, Rodgers is going to have another MVP season. And I would not be shocked if he did have an MVP type season. I mean, it really seems like he is fired up. A lot of people really questioned how much is Rodgers' heart in the game the past couple of years. Like, he's doing ayahuasca and all this crap. And, he's away from the team, off-season workouts. Not the case this year. And, you saw with that Hard Knocks clip where, he's, giving it to that scrub defensive lineman from the Giants. I don't even fucking know you. Probably my favorite clip from Hard Knocks overall.
I'm not going to lie, Kyle. The one that hit me the hardest, it was still just, I guess, the impact of the quarterback. Like, to me, the last few years and Rodgers coming in was that first scene where Rodgers is spinning it with the Ed Sheeran song in the background. Like, I even like that song. But just watching 2-minute highlights of Hard Knocks Aaron Rodgers stuff with the coaches commentary and stuff. I think that one probably hit me the hardest, but overall it was really good. I would say the last episode, like, it was nice to see some guys make it, but
It
did
just seemed
they?
like they were really just adding in
Yeah.
fluff to just get a good 45 minutes worth of material.
Yeah, it was okay, but overall, obviously, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. The only thing was, of course, my wife was in the room and she was pointing out, she's like, they say the F word too much in this though, and then I started listening, and like
I'm
every
pretty
other
sure
word,
my
of
wife
course,
said the
after
same
she said
comment.
it, after she said that, 2 seconds later, it's like they're giving speeches in the locker room, just F that, F this, F this. You want to be this F, and I was like, oh my god. It's like, of course, you can't just let me zone in and get and focus in. It's like, nah, little sidebar comments.
By the
but,
way,
yeah.
one of my
We
favorite
all have lives.
scenes.
It's okay.
One of my favorite scenes from the show. I don't know if it was episode 1 or 2. I didn't really see people clipping this and putting it on Twitter. Was when they were playing that stupid game where you have to like throw the football, but like someone's making like a comment, and like as soon as you throw the ball and it's like supposed to throw you off. And when Hackett was throwing the ball, Aaron Rodgers said Sean Payton. That was hilarious.
Yeah, there was a lot of good ones. The Q dominating at practice. Overall, definitely what, Kyle, B plus, A minus. I would give this series overall. I'll say A minus. We'll be positive, but nonetheless,
I'll say B plus.
moving on. Moving on. You haven't been on for a week or so, or actually 2 weeks, I guess now. The 53-man roster. Obviously, we're not going to talk about it a lot, Kyle. But right off the jump, is there anything that really surprised you about this 53-man roster? And now the fact that we're actually going into the season seemingly with this 53-man roster, because we know that typical 53-man rosters initially aren't going to be what the 53-man roster is going to be, a week from then, 4 days from then, whatever it may be. So the fact that we're actually carrying pretty much the initial 53 minus, little bit of, slipping around with Bawden and Morstead in terms of cutting them and bringing them back. But reaction to it, what really stands out?
I think the big thing that stands out is the 2 undrafted wide receivers that made the team. I mean, I guess have been shocked if one of them made it. Both you and I think you might have had Gibson making it. I don't believe that you had Brownlee. I had neither of them making it. So the fact that both of them made it was quite shocking.
Plus Irv Charles, if you're not forgetting that, Kyle, as well.
Very true. Irv Charles as well, which, I mean, what did he really do? I mean, I guess he had one nice catch this preseason, but mostly last preseason was he, showed more. So that was probably the most surprising.
Credit to Nani. I think it's a big special teams move. I don't know how much voice Boyer has in the locker room, but Saleh came out and called Irv Charles a wolf in the special teams game, and then Nani did an article and looked at some of the punt returns, and apparently he is really good, or the returns in general, the special teams. So
I had no idea.
If they're going to keep him for that, and he's going to block a punt or something like that in a big spot this year, then we'll all be thankful we have him.
He is a big man. I will give him that.
Yeah. So let's say hello to the chat a little bit. We'll get into some feelings about the overall roster going to the season, some of the weak spots, some of our expectations, some of the things we're going to be looking at in the Jets-Bills game, their depth chart, expectations for target share, all that type of stuff tonight. I have to jump off at about 8:30 though tonight, so a little bit of a rushed stream where I can't do the whole 2-3 hour thing, but is what it is. We have Eagle Fang, who is now changed to Lionheart. So I still feel like I have to call him Eagle. Kyle, I don't know if I could change his name because that's just what I think of him as now. But keys to the game for him: protect Aaron Rodgers against the Bills' defensive line, which I think is basically, you could say that for every single game this season, right? Protect Aaron Rodgers. And obviously them not having Von Miller is big, but they still have Leonard Floyd. They still have some guys on that front. I'm not necessarily terrified of their defensive line against their offensive line. Hope, and that's with me being hopeful that Becton bounces back to form. He stays healthy the entire game and hopefully the entire season, obviously, knock on wood. And Dwayne Brown's a little bit better than last year, considering he's playing with 2 shoulders. So just kind of taking the first part of that, Kyle, because we can kind of go through the show and dissect the game as we go. What are your thoughts on the Jets offensive line versus the Bills defensive line overall?
Yeah, I was saying to Bills fans that you never, ever root for injuries. At least I don't, because shit, I mean, like, I think it's a fucked up thing to do, number one. Number two, you would absolutely hate it if somebody rooted for an injury against one of your own players on your team. But when I saw that Von Miller was not going to play, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't relieved, because I don't care how old he is. That man still has some juice off the edge. He's quite a unique rusher. I mean, in the sense that he is long. He's got some bend, really good spin move. I mean, there's not too many guys out there like him. And just take, for example, opening week. It was the very first game of the season last year where they opened in LA, and Vaughn had 3-4 sacks in that game. He absolutely dominated. So Vaughn can still play. So losing him is absolutely crucial, but this Bills defensive line does have good depth. Someone like Ed Oliver is a big step down from someone like Quentin Williams. But he can definitely push the interior, and then they do have some guys that can come off the edge, and someone like Leonard Floyd, who I wouldn't necessarily call him like a great ish rusher, but he's a very versatile player that you can use in many fronts, and he gets you in and out of different situations. Greg Rousseau, that's a guy who's kind of come on a little bit. He's really big. I mean, he might be like Becton's height, really, really long arms. The Bills kind of pride themselves on these guys with long arms, and their philosophy, and kind of hearing their coaching staff talk about it, is they want guys who are really long. Even AJ Epinesa is really long, because, they say like, oh, I can, maybe teach a guy to get a little bit quicker, get out of his stance quicker. But one thing I can't do, I could teach a guy technique, but I can't teach length. It's just something a guy has or he doesn't have. So they very much believe in collapsing pockets and things like that. And yeah, protecting Rodgers. I mean, I was just saying this at work today to some Jets fans. Rodgers is not the same person in terms of mobility. That's very obvious. He's even admitted that and stuff. Like, think about that Hard Knocks clip where Zach Wilson had the big scramble against the Bucs, and Mecole Hardman's talking to Rodgers like, you don't move like that anymore. And, Rodgers is like not even denying it and stuff. Like, yeah, maybe earlier in his career, you'd see him do a scramble like that. But Rodgers still has his arm talent, but, he cannot be running for his life around there. And I think it's one of the big reasons amongst several why Russell Wilson took a decline. It's kind of like Cam Newton. Like, is Russell Wilson going to bounce back? Because once these guys, Michael Vick, Cam Newton, some of these, eventually when it happens to Lamar, some of these guys who use their legs a lot, and I'm not comparing Aaron Rodgers' mobility to them, but he was a good mover early in his career. He doesn't necessarily have some of that anymore. So
for sure,
he's going to get the ball. He has to get the ball out quick, and sometimes he's going to have to hold on to it, and hopefully he can reset in the pocket and not have to leave the pocket. Okay, I'm done. Sorry, I know it's not lightning round.
No. You're obviously allowed to. I think that was a good little dissection of the Bills' defensive line and all that stuff and Rodgers. So obviously appreciate that. But yeah, lightning round. We'll figure that out. We're still working on it, obviously, Kyle. But the Jets' offensive line, like, really, obviously, this is a deep defensive line, and I don't think it's one of the. I think obviously we're going to face some stronger defensive lines throughout the year with the Eagles, even the Dolphins are better than the Bills, especially with Von Miller not being present for this first game. But still, it's still a solid unit overall. And the Jets offensive line has a lot of questions. We don't necessarily know how Dwayne Brown's going to come back, right? He is older. He is coming off of surgery. We don't know if Laken Tomlinson's going to bounce back. I think we both agree that McGovern's at least average, and I think he's comfortably going to be that. I'm not really worried in either way. He just kind of is what he is at center, which is completely fine. ABT, I think, is going to dominate. Obviously the injury set him back last year, but I have faith in ABT, especially at guard, Kyle. And if he's playing like he was last year for the first, what was it, like 4 or 5 games he was at guard? Or was it, I think it was maybe the first 4 games he was at guard, and then he switched out the tackle. I forget exactly what game it was last year.
Steelers game was the first game he moved to tackle.
Was that week 4?
I want to say yes. Yeah, because that was Zach Wilson's first week back. He missed the first 3.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm faithful in him, and then Mekhi Becton, obviously probably the biggest X factor on the Jets roster right now, or close to it. I don't think you can argue him past or lower than the top 3 biggest X factors on this team right now. But with him, I'm pretty confident that if he is healthy, he's going to play pretty well. Now against the Bills edge rushers, it's not like we haven't seen some of them give him fits in the past with some of that length and all that in his rookie year. I always forget the name of the rusher who gave him problems. You always have to remind me, but I always blank out on his name. But
Addison, I don't think he's still on the team anymore, but
no, he's not. But with that being said, I think Becton's going to dominate, and I think if he can be healthy, that's the biggest question. But not when he's on the field. I'm faithful that he's going to be pretty solid for the Jets, and in the run game for the Jets, which is kind of the next question. Kyle, is Rob D says, if I had to guess, running back split 50 or 40% Cook, 30% Brees, 30% Carter. Carter could be less, but both Cook and Brees coming off of injuries. If you had to guess like target share, and we're going to bring this up, kind of later in the show, but obviously it's kind of natural that it just flows into the chat right here from Rob D. So great, good question. But running back split. Breece Hall in his first game. Obviously, you have Cook, who's coming off the shoulder surgery. I don't know how long ago exactly it was. I don't know if it was obviously before he signed with the Jets, but I don't know how long he's necessarily had to recover and how healthy that shoulder is. But if you had to guess right now, on Wednesday, how many carries does Breece get? How many targets does he get? We're looking at 8 touches, 10 touches, 12 touches. Do they ride the hot hand? How do you see it?
I definitely think they're a ride the hot hand type of team, as are most teams in the league. I wouldn't expect Carter to get 30%, but I see why Rob says that, being that Breece, they kind of do want to ease him into the season. And Cook, not only is he also coming off an injury, but he's not been with the team that long, although it's easy for running backs to pick up on scheme, and he's a player who's played in the league for a while. So you wouldn't expect much of a learning curve there, but nevertheless, there is some learning curve. I don't know. It's a good question, but I would not put Carter as the same percentage of either of those other two guys. Just based on the way the team talks about both players, you look at the contract that Cook got, you look at once Breece Hall really started to take over this team, it was not anywhere close to an equal distribution of carries. I think they're going to kind of roll out there, shuffle between Cook and Breece and kind of ride the hot hand from there. And you might see Carter come in certain series and, maybe certain third downs, you don't want Cook in there because he's not such a great pass blocker on third down. But I would not expect Carter to be in close percentile as the other two. What do you think?
It is. Yeah, no, I would agree. I don't think Carter gets as much as 30%. I would say it's more around, maybe 5 to 7, touches / maybe catch or two. Just because I don't really trust him in the pass protection game, so I don't really know exactly when he gets onto the field. Carter, at least, yeah, and early on maybe he does rotate a little bit more than I'm expecting, but I would expect it to be less than 30% even in the first game. I would say Breece Breece Hall is going to be, let's say, 8 carries, maybe 3 catches, 4 catches, somewhere between like 8 and 15. I would say max for Breece in the first game. And then with Dalvin, I would say probably about the same. I think they're going to go probably about 35% each, and then a split between Michael Carter and maybe Izzy. Is Izzy healthy for this? I think he's healthy for this first game. I don't know if the Jets are going to be cautious with him and hold him out, maybe because of the leg injury he had, or what's going to happen with him, because that kind of factors in. But I would say Breece and Dalvin probably about 35% split with the carries. So next question, or this is actually a really good one. I read it kind of before, and it's a little bit harder than I wanted it to be, Kyle, because I really didn't think about this until this exact moment. But 48 of the 53 dress. So who is inactive for this game? He thinks it's going to be Barnes, Izzy, Mitchell, Brownlee, and he says the 5th spot is tough. So if you had to putting you on the spot,
that's really putting you on the spot.
the five who will not dress for this game.
Well, you don't count Eccles.
He's on the roster right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bryce Hall suits up. Maybe one of the other offensive linemen doesn't suit up. I don't have a name coming to mind. What do you think?
Yeah, I honestly don't know, because I think it could be Barnes, right? Because you have Amos in the box there, and then you have Sherwood. I think they're going to start over him. I could see Izzy just because of what I just said with the injury, so holding him out. Okay, I understand that. Mitchell versus Turner. I really don't know who they hold out before between Mitchell and Turner. Maybe Turner does get the nod because he's Rodgers' boy. I don't know. Brownlee, I think that's a lock.
The nod over Mitchell.
Yeah, I think Brownlee's a lock to not play this game because and for most of the season, I think he's pretty much going to be on ice just because 7 receivers are not going to see that dress, and obviously if Irv Charles is the special teams wolf that he is, he's going to play for special teams purposes. I could see maybe Gibson, but I don't think they run into the game with 5. But I also don't think they run into the game with less than because we have 9 offensive linemen now. Mitchell would make 8, and then 7 if Turner was to go, or Schweitzer. I don't think that's going to happen. So I say you stay at 8 with the offensive line. So Barnes, Izzy, Mitchell, Brownlee. Yeah, that last spot is really I can't even say Ashton Davis because he's going to be on special teams too. I really don't know who that 5th spot is. It's gonna come to me in a little bit, Kyle, but I really can't. I can't think.
Somebody
of
in the chat
exactly.
will say a good name.
So yeah,
sure
Nick. It's not gonna be like Nick Bawden or anything like that, right? So none of the safeties. It's not gonna be Whitehead. It's not gonna be obviously. Yeah, I don't know.
How much specials does Baldwin
Hall?
play too?
Maybe Hall. I don't know.
I mean, I did put that name out
there.
there too, but I don't know. I still feel like they like to have him as one of the backups, even though whenever he comes in, he seems to get roasted.
Curious if Kincaid concerns you, you gents. Andrew Golden scared me about that particular matchup. I'm not going to act like I watched Kincaid a lot. Obviously, before the draft, Kyle, we said that we weren't really in tune so much with this draft, and I never expected the Jets to draft a tight end just because of where they were and their tight end situation, because of all the resources they already poured into it. So I definitely didn't watch Kincaid. Now, with tight ends in general, I think that he is going to probably be the third or fourth option in terms of their passing game. Obviously, you have Davis, you have Diggs, you have Kincaid. I think Cook out of the backfield for them is obviously an option. And then I don't know if I said
Dawson Knox has a pretty decent contract for them.
Yeah, right. I completely forgot about Dawson Knox. So he's their maybe at best their fourth or fifth target in this game. And typically with tight ends, Kyle, we know that they develop pretty slowly in the NFL. It's a really hard position to adjust to. So how much does he really play in his first game? And it depends on the running game. Are the Bills going to change it up this year and not run with Josh Allen and maybe try to establish a little bit of a running game? And that's one of the changes they're going to make. We don't know. They have a new OC and DC this year, right?
No. They still have Ken Dorsey. He was the OC last year.
Is that the Eagles? It's the Eagles I'm thinking about with a new OC and a DC. But maybe their defense does take a step back. I know was it Michael Hyde who was. They said that he was out of practice today, but he practiced. So I don't know exactly what happened with that. I'm assuming he's going to play if he practiced today. And you do have to be nervous about their safeties, but the thing with their safeties and why
injuries.
Both of them are coming off of injuries. Both are 33 or 32 years old. So you have to worry about that a little bit, even though I still think you could be really good safety until obviously your elder years. And that's why so many corners switch to safety. So I still think it's more mental and they're still good in that aspect, but still not the players they were, 3 or 4 years ago. Right. Trey White and their corners, I'm not necessarily terrified of what they got or what they have on defense anymore. Now I still think they're a good team, a good defense overall, but maybe it's the unjustified confidence in Aaron Rodgers, but just beating this team last year with Zach Wilson and almost beating them again, later on in the season. And if you don't have a couple of dumb penalties and Mosley jumping over the line of scrimmage, then we may actually win that game. And I know the first game last year they didn't have Milano, and they have Milano in this game, but Edmonds is gone from this team. You have the safeties who are obviously a year older, and then looking at their corners, are we terrified of Tre'Davious White? And now it's looking at their depth chart, it's Christian Benford.
I think as their corners. Trey White is definitely still a top 10 corner in the league.
Okay, yeah, I think I'll have to go through the actual list, and I know he was injured last year, and maybe I have a little bit of Jets bias because the last couple of times I watched Garrett Wilson versus Trey White, I felt like Garrett Wilson did pretty well off in those games. So maybe just watching the rest of Trey White,
I don't think
I would
he
have
played
a
against him in the first matchup. I think he only played
the second one in Buffalo.
Yeah.
But with that being said, for this question, Kincaid, does he scare me this game? No, later on the season in a few years potentially, but not necessarily this year.
I'll say this: I've heard lots of good things about the man. Apparently he has like really, really, really good hands, and he's quite the blocker too. So just from like a way you want to run an offense, like you don't want to be very predictable. So when you have a guy like that, you're not necessarily tipping your hand. So. He could be a guy to watch for years to come, unfortunately.
Damn, we're already talking about booing the Jets. Jesus. No, I don't think we're going to boo the Jets, Kyle. Just talking about, giving them some credit, and they deserve some credit going into this game. People are going to be pumped, dude. I'm going to try my absolute best. So, Kyle, previously, when I worked night shift, I didn't really have to talk to a lot of people, so I can risk going to work with no voice. Now that I work day shift, I cannot necessarily do that. So I really have to work on not screaming and losing my voice on intros and specifically through the game. And especially if it's a close game late, I don't know how I'm not going to lose my voice. But I'm going to have to try my absolute best. But no, we're not worrying about booing. We're going to, I think we're going to cheer pretty loud. Now, obviously, if they get blown out, no.
Oh, yeah.
We're not even thinking about that. We're not even thinking about that. Yo Dix from Stephen Engel as per usual. Lloyd Gross, what is up? Credible commenter. Let's see. So their defense again. I think it's solid. I think they play really, really strict to their zones, and they're really disciplined in all of their zones and their pass offs and everything that they do on defense, because they've been together for so long, and Sean McDermott's been there for so long, and obviously now he's taking over the defensive play calling, so we'll see how it goes. But he's been there for a while, so you think he'd be pretty comfortable. So it's a defense that is very sound, but I feel like with a sound quarterback who can attack the defense and just take what they give you, I'm confident in our offense moving the ball a little bit on this defense. And then with a running game, obviously they couldn't contain it last year very well, and I'm pretty confident in our offensive line, at least on the right side, creating some room, some push, and then even on runs to the left side, I'm confident in the right side of the offensive line, creating some good cutback lanes for those running backs. So I think it's going to be a little bit more run heavy than some people expect. I'm not looking at this game and saying Rodgers is going to throw the ball 35, 40 times. If you had to say, Kyle, where would you guess he ends up around? I know we're going all over the place right now, but looking at Rodgers, and looking at the splits of the running back. In this game, how many times do you think he's gonna drop back and throw the ball?
I think he'll probably have around 30 pass attempts.
Yeah, I was gonna say high 20s to the low 30s. It kind of depends on the flow of the game, but if we're running the ball and moving it well, I can see mid 20s to high 20s, and obviously that's the way we hope the game goes. Now, obviously, I want a blowout, but if we're running the ball well, we're probably winning the game. So. Flipping to the opposite side of the ball, we talked about the offense a little bit with the offensive line, their defensive line, our offense with Rodgers. In terms of our defensive line, which is our biggest strength compared to their defensive line, which is one of their bigger strengths, but against the Bills' offensive line, how are you feeling about their offensive line right now? Because I believe Spencer Brown is starting, right? I can obviously just click on the depth chart we just pulled up, but Spencer Brown is the right tackle, and he had fits last year with guys like Huff, and now you have McDonald coming, now you have a better JJ coming, hopefully. Lawson's healthy, which is not something I expected, watching him run a couple of weeks ago. But do you think we could take advantage of this offensive line of the Bills?
Yeah, so I think Mitch Morse is a player who's definitely in decline. Quinnen Williams, and by the way, when Quinnen Williams, they did the NFL Top 100 thing, and they had various people they had Mitch Morse talking about Quinnen Williams, and he said much good things about Quinnen Williams, and that's because Quinnen Williams beat the shit out of him last year in both games, if I remember correctly. I don't think much of Spencer Brown. I think Osiris Torrance did win the job. I'll say this. I did watch about 1 to 2-ish of Torrance's games when I got a hold of some All-22 film for the draft. I like Torrance. Torrance moves people, man. If he gets
he's strong, right?
He moves people.
Yeah.
But he is a rookie. So, I mean, it was kind of like a Bryce Hall versus Sauce Gardner situation in training camp last year where they made Sauce win the job. Well, they made Torrance win the job here because they had him battling it out with Brian Bates, if I'm not mistaken. And, I think, part of the staff probably wanted to go with Bates because, he knows the calls and things like that, and he's familiar, and he's a guy who you can move into different positions. But, talent-wise, you just got to go with Torrance. But so Torrance, he could have a couple mental lapses, right? Maybe he doesn't pick up a stunt, right? Something like that leads to a sack. So, Connor McGovern, I don't claim to know a ton about the player. Deion Dawkins is very solid. I don't think Carl Lawson particularly had good games against him last year. So, you're hoping that maybe McDonald or one of these guys, maybe, Jermaine Johnson, you could put him on the left side and they can do a better job than Carl Lawson did. So, but I do think that the Jets could have quite a good game against this offensive line because I don't think they're very strong, right? From center all the way to right tackle, you're talking about inexperience, decline, and I don't think Spencer Brown is just very good. So.
Yeah, and especially if you're lining, Q up over Morse or over Torrance, who he looks strong, but he's a rookie versus Quinnen Williams, who is going to be hopefully a top 3 defensive tackle in the league this year, if not the best. I have some faith that he can be that good this year. Now, does he actually finish there? Obviously, question for a different day. But this defensive line versus really all the offensive lines we're going to see this year, right, Kyle, we should be saying they could win this game. This could be the difference for our team, because I would argue that it's the strength of the team. Whether you want to argue 1 or 2 with that in corner, which maybe, I really actually is corner better than D-line, Kyle? Have you even really discussed that? I think we've ranked some of the position groups here,
question.
But if you really had to answer the question, okay, what's going to carry this team? And I do think defensive line, if I had to choose, okay, I want that rush over the corners. In terms of what you're going to build first, give me those rushers over corners, especially in the game nowadays, how corners can affect the game like they used to, 10, 15, 20 years ago, whatever it may be. But with that being said, this defensive line is, while stacked, do you feel like, DJ Reed as the 2 and Michael Carter the second as the 3 is a little bit better than what we have behind Quinnen Williams on the edge?
I would go with the defensive line just because of the fact that there's so much depth there. When we did our rankings, I ranked Quinnen over Sauce based on what I saw last year. I think he's, Sauce is definitely elite, but there's more room for growth there. Whereas Quinnen is already at the very top of the list, and Sauce is also at the top of the list. I'm just saying like Sauce has more room for improvement. And then I just think with the D line, there's just so many different guys that can get to you and cause havoc there.
So many different ways too.
Yeah. And DJ Reed is a very good player, but might be slightly overrated just because it's a great story. He has a really great attitude and things like that. He's always healthy, but I'm
not even dipping my toe into those waters. We're already the negative people. I'm not even dipping my toes into the DJ Reed overrated type waters tonight, Kyle. It's too short of a show. It's only an hour and a half. But we have Simon in here who says ready for the season, 11-5. Trying to trick me here. It's 11-6, right? 11-6 or 12-5. Kyle, have you changed your mind? I think you and I both predicted 11-6 this year for the Jets.
That sounds.
Of course, it's our year to freaking compete. These next 2 years in the AFC is the strongest it's been in my entire lifetime, at least to my knowledge. So, at the risk of being judged, Kyle, Snowball says, Joe, when will you and Kyle be attending MJ on Broadway? I haven't. I don't think I would like to attend MJ on Broadway. I've seen some Broadway plays that are actually pretty funny. And entertaining, but I saw Aladdin, which I thought was pretty funny. It was obviously for kids, but there was some little subliminal adult humor in Aladdin, which was good. With I saw that one, and then what else did I knew I saw it was like Newsies and I think Stomp, but I don't know if Stomp's on Broadway. This is the one where they play on trash cans and all that stuff, like the music. I forget what that's called. I don't know it might be called Stomp, but 2 or 3. But MJ, I don't think so, Kyle. Will you be seeing MJ anytime soon?
Yeah, I think I never even been to a Broadway play, period. I'll tell you this. I did take 2 theater classes my first year in college. So I'm not opposed to the theater in general, but I've never been to Broadway. And I think that I'd probably want to see other plays before MJ.
Yeah, that's not necessarily on my radar. So X Factor is my OG crew, Snowball. Yes, you've been here for quite a bit, Bonesy. And this year we actually skipped our fantasy league. I just couldn't pull it all together. I've just been so busy in the last 3 weeks, but we're going to continue it next year. And Bonesy is in that league. So always appreciate Bonesy being in the chat. Really intrigued to watch the Tony Adams project. Yeah, Kyle, I think that's one of the bigger questions going into this year, right? On defense. Now, we know the defensive line is strong. We know the cornerbacks are strong. But Tony Adams, exactly what he's going to be. I think we know Amos is going to be in the box. And we mostly know that he's going to be, okay in the box. He'll get beat sometimes, but he's a decent player down there. But Tony Adams not really playing a lick of preseason. And then when he did play in the preseason, there wasn't many plays where he was necessarily tested or I saw exactly what I wanted to see in terms of him being tested. So you have some players who are talking him up. Quinnen Williams is talking about him. I think that's like an all-pro or something like that, which is obviously he's going to praise his teammates. But still, it is intriguing that they didn't really give him a lot of run. So that's a big swinging factor in this Jets season as well. Now, last year it was Lamarcus Joyner. I think that Tony Adams is going to be better than Lamarcus Joyner because if he's just not terrible, he's better than Lamarcus Joyner. But I think Tony Adams could be a decent player. Now is he going to have some bumps? Yeah, because you have to look at this like basically his rookie year, right, Kyle? Because he played 3 games last year, or was it 2? It was just Seattle and the Dolphins, I believe it was. So he's entering his 3rd game in his rookie year, basically. So he's going to have some lumps. But we'll see how exactly he's going to respond. But I think we mentioned or we talked about this a few times, Kyle. But Tony Adams, you saw him a little bit in the Giants game. I don't think he stood out too much on broadcast or if you watch the film or whatever it may be. But what are your thoughts on him going into the season?
Cautiously optimistic. Is that the way to sum it up? It could be one of these things where, man, the Jets really found a diamond in the rough. And then maybe he, it could also be one of these things where, you're scratching your head at the end of the season saying, man, I really kind of wish that they kind of made a run and got a higher quality safety rather than going with a guy who had lots of question marks. But I think I'm more on the optimistic side. I think that Douglas is an overall good evaluator of talent. And one thing I've said so much about Saleh that I like about Saleh, I mean, I do have question marks about him in terms of, some game management stuff and just his overall, scheme knowledge. But I do think he's a good evaluator of talent, and the staff is very high on Tony Adams' talent. So it seems. So they see the kid every day, a bunch of stuff in practice and the film room that we're not seeing. So I'm going to lean on that.
Yeah. So I just looked at the Jets.
Hold on, but we got a super chat, Joe, from our boy Jan.
Sorry. I did not.
See you boys in 5 days.
So Jan, what time are you coming to the tailgate? That is the question. We'll have cornhole, obviously. I don't know. I'm hoping this game. We have to chill, Kyle, or I have to chill because certain home openers I go into and I don't necessarily always enjoy the game or remember the game. So this year, even though with all the excitement, I have to make sure that I play a little bit more cornhole and shotgun of 2 or 3 less because we get a little bit crazy, and especially with the excitement this year, I have to really be mindful about calming down. So Jan, do not be a bad influence, but I will see you on Monday at about hopefully 3:00. So so depth chart, Kyle. I pulled up the Jets depth chart, and obviously, Jan, we appreciate you for the $20 super chat. You don't have to do that, but obviously we appreciate it. With the Jets depth chart and pulling that up, I was thinking about who exactly are not going to carry on game day because we got asked that before by I believe Ron D, and then somebody asked in the chat, okay, who are the 5 players? So with that being said, Kyle, I looked at it. I kind of forgot about Chaz Surratt before. So Chaz Surratt, Zaire Barnes. We have Brownlee, Mitchell, and then who was the 5th? I forget who the other 5th that we mentioned was. Izzy. Okay, so those are the 5. I would add Chaz Surratt to that because he's coming off an injury too. I don't know exactly how healthy he is, but being a young guy, and do I think going into the game with 4 linebackers is a little bit light? Sure, but at safety, I think they carry all 4. At corner, they're only at 5 right now, right? Defensive line, you want all your guys. We know how heavy they are on the rotation. Offensive line, they're not going to screw around on that like they did last year. And then running back at 3, tight end at 3 is not, that's not heavy. So that's a lighter position group already. So they're not going to take another one away from that. Quarterbacks too, right? So I think it really only could be a guy like Chaz Surratt, or maybe it's a Gibson, but I think Gibson makes it. So I would say Chaz Surratt or Gibson's probably in the fight for that 5th spot, but I think Gibson gets it, and Chaz Surratt's probably set on the bench, and Amos is playing that 5th linebacker role, or really that 4th linebacker role.
Yeah. So when the Jets put out some depth chart, I don't know if it was today or yesterday or whatever, didn't they have punt returner? It said Hardman or Gibson. I think it's going to be Gibson. Just look at the way people on the team talked about his return skills and his quick feet and things like that. And I think it's going to be like Hardman in desperate situations. Like, let's say that Gibson has a bad field, like the way that Braxton Berrios fielded some punts last year, especially in that Buffalo game. Like, I don't know what he was doing in that game. Like if Gibson has a moment like that, and might say, okay, maybe he's got the rookie jitters or whatever, we're going to put Hardman back there for the next punt. But I think it's going to be Gibson to start off. And as long as everything goes well, they'll stick with him.
Yeah, I said this on the stream last week with Nani, I believe. I could see them giving it to Gibson, seeing exactly how he plays out, and Hardman being their backup option for the overall returner. But I think in big situations, if Hardman and Gibson don't prove to be necessarily reliable, I could see it being Cobb for those big situations at the end of the game, a coffin corner or something like that. Because Gibson obviously had that muff, and he's had some muffs in college, and Hardman has some muffs as well. And I've seen him field punts inside the 5-yard line, so that's a little bit sketchy. So in situations where you need to be trusted just to do the right thing, I could see Cobb actually subbing in for some punt returns this year as well. Swolsey mentions Hall, and after he's slowly brought up to speed, that he imagines a 70% workload. And we're not going to tell you our fantasy teams. We're not going to get into fantasy, even though I do have a fantasy draft later tonight.
70% is very high for having Cook,
yeah,
and also Michael Carter, who you're hoping has a resurgence,
and Izzy, who you're expecting to have 5 or 10% of the run. I don't know exactly the numbers, but as a whole manager on one of my 5 fantasy teams, 70% sounds great. I don't have Cook in any of my leagues, but I would say it's really hard to quantify, right? It's hard. I would say 50% Hall, maybe 35%. No, even yeah. I don't know, man. 50% Hall, 30% Cook, like 15% Carter, and 5% Izzy, something like that. I don't know if that sounds somewhat right, but
I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be the smartest idea to dress 4 running backs on any given week.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially when you're just asking the question about who is it going to be inactive this week. If you have 3 running backs, does
like
Izzy
if I
play?
plan on giving both Cook and Hall a good amount of touches every game, I don't also want to give Izzy touches as well. I mean, as a coach, it just doesn't seem like the best utilization of resources.
This is actually a good point by Alon Avital, talking about the Jets and their struggles against tight end, because while Kincaid is a rookie, Kyle, we know that kind of at that Pats game a little bit that we were at was the start of the Jets getting a little bit leaky in terms of the middle of the field coverage, and people starting to attack the Jets with a lot of like underneath and short and intermediate concepts over the middle and making the linebackers make quick decisions.
That was so frustrating.
And Mosley, we saw, and listen, I know the positive take is to say Mosley's a Pro Bowl and all that stuff, but Kyle, let's be realistic. Last year, we did see a decline in both his movement skills and how reliable of a tackler he was at sometimes, but also there were some more mental lapses that we haven't necessarily seen or saw early in his career. Or maybe part of that was frustration. You're playing with Zach Wilson, all this stuff. Okay, you're not going to be as disciplined because you can't necessarily win, which is obviously a bad mindset to take. But does that creep in? You don't really know. So he's going to be a little bit more focused this year with Aaron Rodgers? I would say yes. And I would probably say yes for every single player, right, Kyle? You'd say if you had to say, or if you had to guess, does their mental capacity tick up a little bit with Aaron Rodgers and they have that Super Bowl chance? Obviously,
here's the biggest reason I think why, because when you're pressing, like when you're a defense and you're in reaction mode all the time, because let's say that you're losing in the game or the game is tied or whatever, you're more prone to make mistakes. But when your offense has a comfortable lead and you force the opposing team's offense, so if you're CJ Mosley and you're on defense, the opposing team's offense becomes more predictable, and you know that they're going to pass every down on this drive. It's easier for you to play with your hair on fire and, oh, well, they're in this formation, this is the down and distance, and then they become much more predictable and you have less mental lapses.
Yeah, for sure. Swolsey brings up Quinn Williams destroying Mitch both times last year, which the second game he was out, right? That was the game that Quinn Williams missed. But he didn't even play the beginning of that game, did he? He did, right?
I think he did play part of the game. I think he got hurt in that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he definitely did. He definitely did.
But Quinn definitely the MetLife game. I'm pretty sure he had a great game.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited to watch him. I don't think he's a guy we have to worry about with his contract. Yeah, I legitimately think that he wants to be one of the best in the league, and money doesn't motivate him. I think he's a legitimately good guy. So I'm excited to see if he can continue his ascent. This is his third year in a 4-3, and last year he put it together. He knows he still needs to work to be that next level player. So Q is one of those guys, dude. Q, Garrett Wilson, Sauce. Those are the guys who need to be corner. Like you would probably say those three, right, Kyle, going forward, are going to be the cornerstones of the Jets franchise. I know we could talk about guys like, Breece Hall, but realistically in 4 years, they tag him. Does he go after
ABT, hopefully?
Running backs goes? Yeah, ABT. I would say ABT is probably the third or the fourth in that situation, but definitely a good pull there.
Spent a lot to go and get him.
I would say those four have to be here in 5 or 6 years, right? Like now we don't know exactly what's going to happen with their injuries and stuff like that, but if you could fast forward in 6 years from now and say, okay, who's just on the depth chart? It's those 4 guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And there could be, in a couple weeks, we could very well say, Jermaine Johnson's got to be in there too. Like, let's say he just goes out and absolutely tears it up, then our opinion could quickly change on that.
Dude, and Jermaine Johnson, we were obviously never the biggest fans of his pass rush, and he's improved this year, and I still think eventually he could be, a 10, 12 sack guy. I think that's probably more of his ceiling. I hate necessarily like putting a ceiling on guys, but being a 10, 12 sack guy is not it's not me insulting the guy. That's obviously a really good player. And if you put that on top of the fact he's going to be a really solid edge defender, he already was that in his year one, a very good guy in the edge game, and a guy who's going to get you 10, 11 sacks, if that's his ceiling, then, obviously slam dunk of a first round pick. So is he going to get that this year? I'm not going to say that. I have a little more faith he's going to be more towards the 6, 7, range this year. Maybe 5, 6, 7. I would put Jermaine Johnson at. I could see 8. Where would you put Jermaine Johnson, Kyle, if you had to put a number on his sacks this year? I'm gonna go 7 flat.
Honestly, it sounds like a pretty good number.
Which is good.
I'll agree
And
with
good in the
you.
run game, seven sacks in your second year. You're worth that first round pick at that point, right?
Hopefully he'll just keep getting better year in, year out. It does seem like he's highly motivated, so I'll give him that.
Yeah, I don't think it's a question now. And like that was one of the things they mentioned in this. I don't know exactly. Was it Robert Saleh who's mentioned in one of his speeches that like this is a room that he'll go to war with in terms of like just their character, and that's been a big emphasis for Joe Douglas and bringing in guys like Uzama, bringing in guys like Cobb. Just looking at their drafts, and you look at all the team captains they draft and guys who don't necessarily get arrested and all that stuff. They're pretty clean with all that. That's why that Tyreek Hill thing was a little bit surprising, and how they brought him in. And even some people question that with Dalvin Cook, but obviously his legal problems are apparently clean. So I think that was a good point by Saleh, and that's something that makes me have some faith in this team. Now, obviously, you have to go out there and prove it on the field, but that's something that I maybe look into a little bit more than you do, Kyle. We've had those discussions in the past with guys like CJ Uzama and how much the locker room actually means. And maybe this Hard Knocks made some people appreciate it, but I think it legitimately matters when you're going through however many months of traveling and all this stuff to different spots and trying to obviously pull it all together for the Super Bowl.
Definitely matters to a certain extent. Sure.
It matters, but only 5%. Thank you for putting me down easy there, Kyle. So Danielle Murphy.
I'm probably just saying it matters less in the NFL than it does in either college or high school. For sure.
I think as you go down in levels, that's 100%. It's 100% true. I would not disagree with you on that one. The Loki addition to the season could be Lawson's Achilles. And we were all excited for Lawson. Obviously, getting signed by the Jets, he gets injured in that Packers practice last year. He's solid, right? I think we both agree that he's a solid player. Nothing to write home about. He's not one of your top 5 players or anything like that, but still a decent edge defender, and obviously a pretty solid pass rusher in terms of getting to the quarterback and getting pressures, etc. And then this year, he's a little bit under the radar because he hasn't really been a focal point on one Jets drive like he was that 1 year Hard Knocks or anything like that. It's been more on JJ. And then going through the offseason, seeing him run the way he did 2 weeks ago when he's running upright with his back. I don't know if you saw that video, Kyle. We've spoken about that. But
I remember you mentioning it.
Yeah. So obviously then he gets stuffed down a little bit more and you don't think about him. But going through the season with Lawson, what are you expecting from him?
I'd love to say he's going to have his best year as a Jet, but I'm not super optimistic about that given the injury and given the influx of new talent and talent that's already on the roster that is ascending. And the fact that he's not great against the run, I would expect, his snaps to decrease this year by a decent portion. So, and that's also indicated too by his contract. He reduced it, if I'm not mistaken. I think you mentioned that last week or 2 weeks ago.
Ooh.
So, I wouldn't be shocked if Will McDonald has more sacks than him this year, truthfully.
This is a good point. I'll bring it up because you have to admit when you're wrong. I thought Cobb was a solid punt returner in terms of him not fumbling the ball, and then Rivka corrects me and says that he's had 10. So Kyle, we might have to be a little bit sketched out with
10 is a lot.
Because I know they put out an article. And I apologize, Rivka, for forgetting the numbers, and I'm sure you'll put it in the chat in a second if you're still here. But I know Hardman has quite a few. Gibson has quite a few. But Gibson's obviously a young player, and you hope he improves with under Boyer's guidance. But there's not necessarily a reliable guy back there, so a little bit sketchy on the punt returns because Kyle, we know that one play can change a season. That one punt that Cobb may fumble could be the difference between 11-6 and 12-5 and getting home field or not. So. Every play matters this season, which is
most reliable
exciting,
punt
right?
returner that I can remember in Jets history, Jeremy Curley. You never worried about him muffing it, never.
Yeah, and the funny thing was the funny thing was with that, like people bitched about it, which I get. You want that electric guy, but compared to what we've had in the last few years, I'm thinking Curley, right? He always made the right decision. He always let it bounce over his head if he's behind the 10. He didn't really muff him. And there were some times
punt return for a touchdown again, 2012 home opener against the Bills.
Yeah. There was that one. I don't know if he's had another one. I think that might be the only one of his career, but still, I think he was around maybe if you had to guess 9 or 10 career return guy in terms of his average per punt. So he was always okay. I would take him this year, which again, people bitched about him, but they didn't realize he was actually decent. But everything in those years was just bad. So punt returning was bad as well. Jets should run to Leonard Floyd's side repeatedly. He's awful against the run. And correct me if I'm wrong, is he going to play off the right side more? And honestly, I completely forget if I've seen him off the right side more, but I'm having some like flashes of him going to be lined up against Becton on that defense is left, but the Jets right. So I would take advantage of that if that's a matchup.
Is he awful against the run? I don't know that to be true.
I just think he's a little bit light, right? He's not.
He is a little light,
rocking
but
like 270 or anything like that.
He's a little light, but that doesn't mean he's bad against the run, though.
Yeah, You'd hope that Becton can overpower him, right? But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think the Jets are going to run the ball pretty well in this game. I think that's what they're going to lean on. Project Prospect with Dom C. Make sure to go follow that. I know he's linking up a little bit with like Buffalo Jets fans and stuff. So Dom C, promote your stuff. Make sure to do that. Hey guys, schematic question for you: does Tony Adams now at free safety allow us to get out of 2 deep looks and more into cover 1? Could aid in run support versus 12 personnel having a heavier box? Kyle?
I mean, if his range is what we're hoping and expecting it to be, yeah, sure. But the league in general is doing a lot of less single high than they did 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. So you'll definitely see some of those looks and expect that Tony Adams will be the guy back there. And if they truly think that he's got great range and stuff, then you would see it more often if the Jets do want to go a little bit more daring. But cover 1, it gives you the ability to blitz more and stuff. And the Jets they're not going to blitz a lot. And they just don't do that. And someone like Mosley's not a good blitzer too. So
I do think I know the Jets played a lot more 4 and 6 than people actually imagine they do. That's more of what they do in terms of like quarters and then playing quarter half with their defense. There is some 3 in there. I know they play some 1, but really I could see Tony Adams coming more in the box or playing 1 high, but not necessarily because of 1, more because of a 3 or like a 6 or something like that. But yeah, I don't know in terms because they didn't really play a lot of 2 deep looks last year, right? The Jets. So
I don't have anything else to add.
Yeah, right. I don't because they're gonna play more 4 and 6 anyway. But in terms of getting out of cover 2 looks in the box, I don't know. I don't know exactly what they're gonna try to do. Let's keep moving on. But appreciate the question. Sorry we didn't have the best answer for you there.
Anyway, thank you so much for the super chat too.
Yeah. If really, and in terms of coverage with the Jets versus the Bills, Kyle, what are you expecting? Because just in terms of how they're going to play Josh Allen, obviously we're looking at 4-man rushes, a lot of stunts. The Jets are going to stunt as they do, and I think that's one of the reasons they actually drafted McDonald. I think they were top 5 in terms of stunt percentage last year, which not a lot of people know. At least top 10. With that being said, how are they going to play Josh Allen? Do you play a little bit more deep and try to make him nickel and dime you? Do you take some more risk? How exactly do you want to get pressure in his face and make him, throw a pick or 2 to, Jordan Whitehead like he did last year? Exactly how are you going to try to handle him and what are you going to try to make him do?
That's a good question. The problem is there's so many different ways he can beat you. Even if you look at the game at MetLife Stadium that we did win last year, I mean, like, it was still a great play by him at the end of the game. I mean, I do like the approach of making him nickel and dime you because he can make a head-scratching mistake every now and then. Like you said, like he had a couple of both those interceptions at MetLife Stadium last year. So if you make someone nickel and dime you, you are opening them up the amount of times where someone can have a brain fart at quarterback and, make an interception or have a fumble or something like that. Thing is his arm talent it's too good for you to be playing, really risky. Like, sometimes when the talent on the Jets rosters declined during the later years of the Rex Ryan tenure, they were getting burned a lot. Do you remember that game in Cincinnati when, what's his name? He played receiver for the Lions for a while, but he started off in Cincinnati. He had like 4 touchdowns against the Jets in that game. Damn, why am I forgetting his name? I think he was with Jacksonville last year. Yeah, someone's gonna have it, but this was, I want to say 2012-ish in Cincinnati. Thing is Rex's defense has played so risky, but he didn't really have the talent that could always cover and stuff. Thing is if you make mistakes against Josh Allen, he's got the arm that he could just, he could just beat you deep for a bomb. So I do like the idea of nickel and diming him in terms of getting pressure. Yeah, sure. I mean, you want to get pressure on every quarterback.
Yeah, of course.
Unique.
And they're not going to send a blitz. And I was thinking a little bit more about like the cover 2 versus the cover 1 thing. The only thing with the Jets is they're really going to play a lot of 3 high, but it's not necessarily because it's 3 high in cover 3. It's more 3 high because it's going to be cover 6, and that's a coverage I prefer to play against the Bills, especially when you're trying to take away their one weapon. If you're going to try to take away Diggs, I don't know if Sauce is necessarily going to follow a Stephon Diggs, but if you can press him and have a safety over the top, I could see the Jets doing that and then playing cover 4 on the the backside of it, or wherever Stephon Diggs is not, to get those guys in more man-to-man matchups, but really have Sauce have help over the top. Or maybe even they kind of pull a little bit of a Bill Belichick type of thing, and they're going to put DJ Reed on a Diggs and then have safety help over the top, because then they'll have Sauce on their number 2 and he can lock them up. So they really, that 4 look though, if you're going to press them more and you have some faith for with Sauce in terms of playing him 5 yards and in, he's kind of in the box as well to fill in and force off the edge there too. So it's a loaded question because of all that, and they didn't necessarily play a lot of cover 2 last year, at least to my knowledge. I didn't chart their defense, so it's not a primary look that they're necessarily going to be in.
On Allen last year, I think he was
to the right side. Yeah, and even if it's not a 2, if it is a 2, it could be a Palms. But in that one, it definitely was a 2. But I'm pretty sure they were probably I would say a bottom 10 team in cover 2. I think they were higher in 4 and 6 than people realize. They didn't play. I think 3 was like the middle of the league. 1 was pretty high in the league, or at least above the middle half. And then I think 2 was actually one of the lowest for the Jets, I believe. But I forget. I'm not good with stats. And charting something I would do if this was a full-time job, Kyle. But unfortunately, I cannot chart, and I do not subscribe to PFF just based on merit at this point. So maybe I'm doing myself a disservice in terms of seeing the coverages and things like that. But it is what it is. I love when
by the way, I saw Rivka said earlier, and I'm assuming you'll get to this at some point, but just being that you were mentioning stats, Rivka said that AVT gives up a lot of pressures, and I'm kind of wondering where that stat comes from. Yeah. Maybe as a tackle, he gave up a disproportionate amount of pressures, because I didn't think he had a great game at tackle against Highsmith in the Steelers game. But as guard, I don't know. I don't see him give up a ton of pressures, at least not in the guard games that he played last year. I don't know.
Yeah, and he was charting it, because if there's like a stunt pass off or something like that, and he's relying on the right tackle or the center to pass it off in a certain way, and they really pick it off or pick it up badly. Do you trust the person who's watching that film to really judge the pressures? Now, if they don't pass off a stunt correctly, is it on both the center and the guard, or is it on just the center and just the guard? I don't know exactly how they chart in the formula, so I don't like to get into pressures and all of that stuff. Or who's responsible, just because I don't trust exactly who's doing it. So I think Rivka said something about McDonald having 12 sacks or he could be a 12 sack guy.
I could see him by year 12 sack guy in year 2.
So could I. With that being said, though, Kyle, do you think he ever gets the opportunity to get that many rushes, or do you think the Jets are going to keep JJ around and JFM around and Huff around?
Okay, I think Huff I think Lawson could both be gone next year.
I agree that both of them could be gone. I think the Jets try to keep one of them, and I think it does end up being Huff, and maybe for $6 to $8 million a year. Maybe I would say that's probably his price, and they get rid of Lawson and his $8 million. I would say that's probably the move for the defensive line. Everybody just continues to progress, and then you're kind of running with the same group next year, maybe within 1 or 2 additions. Kind of bottom a churning of maybe guys like Al Woods or Quentin Jefferson, or obviously Carl Lawson. But the group is going to pretty much stay intact with just Lawson gone next year.
Yeah.
So we'll see, but
I'd like to hang on to Huff, but he's so one-dimensional. So there's the issue.
Well, how much do you pay? And that's the thing about this year is a lot of people are projecting. Okay, JJ's going to get 9-10 sacks, and Huff's going to have 5, 6, 7 sacks, and McDonald's going to have 5 sacks. They're fitting another guy into that defensive line rotation, which at times last year was already pretty late for what we felt guys should get. Should Huff have gotten more than 17% or 18, 19, 20, whatever it was, and JJ I think was high 20s or low 30s. Should he have gotten more? So JFM, I think there was a game he played 49% And then there was games he played, 55, 56, whatever it is, but he's still making a lot of money for, just playing those snaps. And then even all the way up to the top, Kyle, like Quentin Williams at times, 60% of the reps. You're talking about a guy who you want in there 75, 80% of the reps. Like, he's one of the best defensive tackles in the league. So
I really hope they
uptick
his snap percentage a pretty decent
Quentin,
amount this year.
Yeah, Quentin, I completely agree with that. I get the rotation of the other guys. It is what it is, but Q is far and away one of the better defensive linemen in the NFL. So, should he be playing 60% of the reps ever? I really don't think so. I'm more comfortable with 70 as the lowest, right? Where's the lowest you'd be comfortable with Q playing this year in terms of like the reps? I would say about 75%.
Yeah, probably not up to 75, but yeah, I mean, if he's hovering around the 70%, I mean, that seems like it's, pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't want to play too
actually,
much, but
sorry.
It's all good.
Didn't mean to rush here. No, I know we're trying to 8:30 is a kind of not necessarily a hard time for me, but I got to start moving a little bit more. We're trickling into a lightning-ish round area here, Kyle. So with that being said, though, just talking about the defensive tackle, we talked about Quentin Williams a little bit. The whole Al Woods thing, and I didn't necessarily. It's not that I didn't chart. I don't think he really two-gapped a lot in the preseason when I was watching him when he was in the game. Are you worried about them with Woods really being a more of a two-gapping guy? Are the Jets and their defensive line coaches going to be a little bit strict to him, penetrating and not putting him in a two-gapping role, and him being a little bit of a fish out of water in that spot and not necessarily taking advantage of his full potential? Because for me, if the Jets are going to do that and he's just going to be a penetrator, not really two-gap, and they're not going to throw a little bit of like hybridness, like Bill Belichickian type stuff into their system, I'll personally be disappointed just because, listen, he's been two-gapping. The guy is 330, 335. He's an absolute monster and he's anchoring down in the middle right there. Let's not try to make him a penetrator because, Kyle, one of my problems in his film review, if you do remember back to it, was I was saying sometimes when he's rushing, he can get a little bit high. And if you're going to try to make him, jump off the ball and penetrate, he's going to be high, and then that's going to take away of some of his, ability to sink and really take advantage of that 330 pounds. So if the Jets are going to try to make him more, that single gap penetrator, that's going to be a negative for me on this coaching staff.
I completely agree. It's funny. So I texted Joe. Oh, geez, we're in lightning round. I texted Joe.
No, it's okay.
Al Woods is 99th percentile in his vertical. He had a 37-inch vertical at the combine. I was utterly stunned when I saw that number. Now, with that being said, he was a good 20, 25 pounds lighter at the combine than he is currently, possibly even 30 pounds lighter. But jumps do signify they are correlated with explosion, but Al Woods is not an explosive guy. That's not how you would define him. So if you're talking about a guy who's shooting gaps, it's a guy, you could say Quentin Jefferson is somewhat explosive. He's a guy who you want shooting and penetrating gaps. So Al Woods, if you're having him, penetrating gaps as opposed to two gapping, it's kind of a waste of his talent to a certain extent. So that would be disappointing. Anyway, we can move on.
Avital mentioned that Floyd is a right D end. I wonder if that's on their depth chart or if they're going to flip that around at all. But him versus Dwayne Brown. Okay. I'm still Floyd is a guy like he's what, like an 8 to 10 sack guy. I think he's a solid player, right? But you're not necessarily he's not Von Miller, right? Like if our tackles have a decent game, Floyd is not going to blow up.
He's long. You can put him in many situations. The person who said he's terrible against the run is wrong about that. It's the guy who, because of his length and things like that, holds as well on the. He sets an edge decently well.
Mm-hmm. So one of the question I wanted to get into, Kyle, or one of the topic before we get into a little bit of the Bills game, the Jets wide receiver position. Now, obviously, when Corey Davis went down, we were thinking that they're going to bring in somebody else, maybe a trade for Mike Evans. Devontae Adams was the pipe dream. We're not necessarily both thrilled with Lazard and Hardman as the 2 and 3. So with that being said, now that it seems like this is going to be the final roster going to the season, are you worried about the wide receiver position and where it's at? Do you think they eventually, make a move deadline? What's the state of the position right now?
Yeah, I'm not as high on Lazard as some other people might be, despite his Rodgers love and connection. Hardman, despite the fact that he was kind of one of these hard knock stars because, he was all giddy and things like that. And obviously he's got lots of speed and he's coming from Kansas City. Sometimes players, like if Andy Reid didn't find a really great role for this guy, it's hard to think that just because he has Aaron Rodgers here that all of a sudden he's going to flourish in a new role. It does feel like the Jets are missing a very solid 2. So I'm a little bit concerned. God forbid Garrett went down, but always if your star receiver goes down, you're in a world of trouble. But it just does feel like, there is talent out there to be had. Hollywood Brown, Mike Evans, and you would like the Jets to do more. I don't think they were expecting several months ago Corey Davis to retire. It's like, well, he did. And therefore you're keeping all these UDFA instead. And it's like, yeah, that's not good enough in a year where you're trying to win the Super Bowl. So,
yeah, I agree. And I get that they can lean more into the run game. They have some good tight ends. I think Ruckert's going to break out a little bit. In his second year, he seems to be a bigger part in the Jets' plans this season. So I think they can supplement it. But at the end of the day, Corey Davis, we thought he was a decent player, at least a decent number 3 receiver, and now they don't have that. And again, I think people, every single receiver in that depth chart behind Garrett Wilson now moves up a spot too high. I think Lazard's a decent, a decent to solid 3. I think, Cobb is a 4 or 5. I think Hardman is a 4, a 3 or 4, really more of a 4. Gadget type of guy who can come in for take the top off the defense, but not necessarily a guy you want starting in your 11 personnel sets. And the Jets are going to run, over 50% at the minimum of 11 personnel. So, I'm not thrilled with the receiver position, but we'll see. We'll see where the Bucs go. I think there's a possibility that the Jets do trade for a guy, whether it be October, whatever. You don't really know, but there's a move to be made there. I'm hoping there's a move to be made there if the Jets do struggle at the receiver position, whether it be Hollywood Brown, whether it be Mike Evans. Somebody else we don't necessarily foresee at the trade deadline. Obviously, everybody's dream is for it to be Devontae Adams, but does that really happen? I have no idea. Is that possible? I don't know if that's possible with his paycheck. So, let's see. Okay, I'm trying to move through this really quickly. Only worried about the wide receiver position if Garrett Wilson gets hurt. Yeah, I guess, but also if listen, like there's games where you could double Devon. You could, like I was saying with Diggs, whatever the Jets are going to do, whether it be cover 4, and Rivka said they played a high percentage of, or that at least too high. Now I don't know if that's too high at the snap or if it's too high and they're actually playing too high, because you could have a lot of quarters looks that look like too high and obviously play like quarters. How exactly did they drop back? Did they get depth, or are they filling in the run game? So it's obviously different, but even with Garrett Wilson, you could have that game plan on him where you're going to play a guy, press on him, and then have a guy over the top and play him on the backside of like a cover 6 and then have that safety over the top. So it happens to the best of them. It happens to Randy Moss. It happened to Calvin Johnson, and it happened to Justin Jefferson last year at times if guys are going to double him. So there's going to be games where you're going to need to rely on your 2, your 3, and I don't have so much faith in those guys now. I think they could still be solid. I think the Jets offensive skill position group is still above average, but I think that's more because of running back and tight end than it's because of receiver. I think receivers probably, if you had to rate the overall group, Kyle, however you're going to quantify that, would you say it's average to below average group, right? It's like in the 14 to 20 range or something like that.
Yeah, I almost kind of want to give them like a B minus.
Yeah.
I mean, like Garrett Wilson could be a top 5 receiver this year. And if he is, which is an if, then, that obviously elevates the group. But I think we kind of know what the other guys are. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, I do think that they could potentially have 3 decently pass catching options at tight end. So I think overall there's a decent amount of talent that could, be wielding the ball on offense this year. So
I saw this before. I really hope the Jets do not sign Kenny Galladay, Kyle. I don't think that's the answer.
Steven Engel says they worked out the Giants, right?
They worked out 3, and Jeff Smith was one of them, which I really did not. I did not.
No interest in that.
So, okay, so Kyle, Bills versus Jets. Also another. Garrett Wilson got brought up to there a little bit. In terms of Garrett Wilson, what are you expecting? I think Nania was throwing it out. I don't know if it was an article or podcast, wherever it might have been, that he's going to have 150 targets this year, or even more, which is Devontae Adams level targets in Green Bay type stuff. So Garrett Wilson in this game, are you expecting 10 plus targets easily for Garrett Wilson? If not, it's a mistake.
Yes, absolutely. If they do not target him 10 times, that is a mistake. And the thing about Garrett is you can move him all over the field, man. You can move him inside, outside. You could, if you wanted to give him an end around, you could. So this man needs to have the ball in his hands because he shows that he can be electric with that ball in his hands. So.
Yeah, and it depends on how they play him too. But I don't think the Bills are a team who's going to necessarily get the double Garrett Wilson. And listen, hopefully they put Tre'Davious White on him because they did it last year. And one of my favorite plays of Garrett Wilson's season was on Tre'Davious White, where he did that peak technique to the inside and then look to the out, and then Tre'Davious White follows his eyes, looks to the inside, and Garrett Wilson cooks him on. Was it an out? I think it was an out to the left sideline. Is that just absolutely beautiful and using his eyes to trick a veteran, corner, somebody you think wouldn't necessarily, fall for that.
I forgot about that play until you just mentioned it.
Dude, it's Garrett Wilson's highlight. There was more. And I find it almost funny that I'm taking this position, but there was more really, really impressive plays from Garrett Wilson than Sauce to me. I think he showed more high highs of holy shit, look at that play.
I don't disagree with you there. I completely agree with you. Actually, let's make another Hard Knocks connections for a second. So in this last episode, which was overall a dud, they were comparing Garrett Wilson to MJ, and I get it. Those unorthodox movements, Garrett has that, man. Thing is the technique is kind of lacking at times, but it's so unorthodox. Corners don't know how to react to it. So
yeah, and we talked about it, and I talked about it in his review, those secondary dead leg breaks that he does is just ridiculous. You don't really see, I've never seen a guy, at least for that last couple of years, do that at least I've studied. So really, really unorthodox, really slippery. Super explosive. I'm always going to worry about his knees. I don't think it's ever going to leave me. When I see him break the way he does, I pray to God, that he's not going to tear one of those ACLs, because those are some of the most explosive and violent cuts I've ever seen. So hopefully he stays healthy. He's just one of those freak of athletes who's just never going to get injured. But we have to hope there. But now looking at the Bills game, wrapping up, Kyle, the last 10 minutes or so. And looking at the roster, which I can pull up there, the Arrow lads. Again, looking at this offense and talking about, okay, they have Dawson Knox, they have Kincaid, but Stephon Diggs. Thoughts on him this game? Do you think he's going to? Do you think the Bills just run right at Sauce Gardner with another out and up like the Giants did with Hyatt, like they did, after putting him in motion? Or
I think that's the way you beat. I think that's the way you beat and attack Sauce, because if Sauce is allowed to get his hands on you, get up in your face, good luck separating from him. But if you can get a little bit of running room on him, he is a little susceptible to that type of stuff. So, but the thing is, being that he was just attacked by Hyatt last week like that, and he knows that Diggs got him with that on the opening drive last year, it's going to be a little bit harder for him to fall for something like that. And I think the Jets coaching staff is definitely going to be expecting that.
Yeah. And do they do bunch sets to try to get, Sauce Gardner off of him and try to run him underneath, and they put him more as the Z, instead of putting him on the X? And I think Gabe Davis would play more of the X in their offense, right?
Yeah.
And you want Diggs to move a little bit more and have that freedom to motion and things like that. Which is he the best matchup for DJ Reed? Not necessarily, but DJ Reed's a far superior player, even though he's not necessarily the ideal body matchup for Gabe Davis. But in terms of who plays the guys underneath with Dawson Knox and stuff like that,
I don't expect any traveling. I think they mostly just like to keep Sauce on one side and Reed on the other. And truthfully, they both seem comfortable on their respective sides. I wouldn't really want to mess with that. I don't think Sauce is even though people love him and he's the next Revis, I don't think he's one of those travel type corners. I'm not saying he couldn't do it and he couldn't do it well. I just don't know that that's where he's necessarily most comfortable. Richard Sherman didn't travel and he did just fine in his career.
They did a little bit with him with tight ends last year, right? You saw him on Mark Andrews and things like that. So maybe some of the bigger tight ends this year, maybe the Kelsey.
It made sense to do it in a game like that because the Ravens didn't really have many good receivers as pass catching options.
Yeah. Yeah, and Rivka brings us up that Reed was terrible on the one side in Seattle, but that was from a really short sample size, right? That was 4 games, Rivka. So, and again, this is one of the things that, okay, I can speak on it because I actually watched it. Watching him at, when he was playing left corner with the Seahawks. I don't think he was brutally bad. Now there was a couple of plays that he gave up, a couple of touchdowns that really flubbed up the numbers, but I didn't watch him. I was like, holy shit, this guy can't play. So I think Reed could travel a little bit more, but obviously this defense just doesn't like to do it. They're a little bit more stagnant with that stuff. But Sauce did follow, some of the bigger tight ends, and then again maybe he does that a little bit with. Well, no, the Eagles, you need him a little bit more on the outside. But with the Chiefs, obviously, you do that. But with this game, Kyle, where you don't necessarily have those type of tight ends with Knox and Kincaid, if they are going to try to attack us there and the Jets do try to, have a little bit more of like put a favorable matchup on the tight ends, how do you think they would try to contain those guys if that is one of the Bills' primary
Can you ask the question one more time, please? I'm sorry, I missed it.
I might have not asked it in the right way. If the Bills are going to attack the Jets short intermediate tight ends, really emphasizing the tight ends, if the Jets do have to change up their defense a little bit and get some individual matchups on those guys, who do you have like the most confidence in to shut those guys down, if anybody?
Well, let's say that Dawson Knox is a fine player. He's a pretty good tight end, top 10-ish tight end in the league. But Kincaid, based on his draft status and things like that, I mean, like he could be a top 5-ish tight end in the coming years, and I don't think anyone would be shocked. Let's say he comes out and he just immediately starts tearing it up in certain formations and stuff. Sauce would be the guy you'd want to lock on him, kind of like how he did with Mark Andrews last year. That'd be the guy to do it because, just in terms of body size, arm length, you want to get his long arms on that tight end. Mm-hmm. And stop him before he's really kind of gains that Rob Gronkowski momentum. Even though I'm not necessarily comparing him at all to Gronkowski. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Now, and with the Bills defense, looking at the Jets offense against them, and the Jets, one of the biggest parts of their offense and one of the biggest parts of Rodgers and his ability to get the ball out quick is the short passing game. The checks at the line of scrimmage, getting guys on smoke routes and. Really quick outside the numbers with opportunities to get yak, and even in the screen game, RPOs, whatever it may be, getting the ball out of Rodgers' hands quickly is going to be an emphasis. And then deep down the sideline vertical balls, that's a part of his game as well. But with the Bills being such a disciplined defense, are you worried about that with the Jets and them trying to pick up some yak yardage, but not necessarily being able to get the passing game going against the Bills defense, who seems to always wrap up pretty well and be pretty strict in their zones?
Yeah, it's a little bit concerning, but I think the thing is, someone like Rodgers is very patient compared to Zach Wilson, who always wanted to take the deep shot and didn't take. One of the things that you highlighted in some of your film reviews of Zach Wilson this preseason is that he was much more willing to take the underneath stuff, even if it was only 3-4 yards. Rodgers has no problem nickel and diming you until the bigger play is open. So, I mean, it's always a concern with the Bills. They'll bend, not break, shore up in the red zone. But you make one mistake, Rodgers will exploit it. So I'm not overly concerned.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So I don't know if this is a real thing. A Let's Go Devils podcast. I think I don't know if I have a Devils podcast I listen to. I honestly look for Devils podcasts. Like last year, I couldn't really find any that had any good ratings or seemed to be very good. So. I might need a Devils podcast, Stephen Angle, to keep myself up on it. So let me know.
Maybe Steven should start one.
He's a big Devils fan. I don't know if Stephen Angle has the filter to do a podcast though, based on his chat. So even though we're not necessarily clean, so yes, Joe, it's real. Okay, I'll check it out then. I showed up late. Do you guys think Hall will get more touches than Cook? I think if I really had to put like a percentage on, I'm not sure what I said before. I think Cook could be a tick higher, 5%. Maybe he gets 12 to 15 touches while Hall gets 8 to 10 to 12. But if Hall looks good and they're riding the hot hand, I can also see Hall out producing or out touching Cook. But if I had to guess, I would say Cook slightly out touches him just because they're going to try to ease Hall back in easy. So he said, I'm a mailman.
We could say the whole easing Hall back in as much as we want. But if he has one of those big Brees runs, 20, 30 yards.
Yeah.
You're going to see
Rivka's in agreement. I think somebody said this before, 40% Cook, Hall, 30% Carter, 30%. I would say more like 40% Cook, 40% Hall, and then 20% Carter in this game. I don't think Carter's going to play 30, but I could be wrong. But.
I'm much more inclined to go with you with Carter getting less than sharing an equal amount with Brees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Kyle, we have about 3 minutes left. So, We don't
Score
actually,
prediction?
we should probably, score prediction time. I was gonna say we don't really preview. We're a big review podcast, but I feel like the best thing to do with previews is to have stats, and they run this coverage and this thing all the time, which we don't necessarily do. So maybe we should do some more research and be more of a preview show for the games than a post game show for the games. But nonetheless, with that being said, and our lack of knowledge about the Bills a little bit, what do you think is going to happen this game? We walk in. Energy is going to be absolutely massive. Do the Jets pull it out 1-0, make a huge statement? Because, Kyle, we know whatever way it's going to be, we're going to, if the Jets lose this game, we're going to hear all this shit about, Hard Knocks. You guys are too hyped up. The Jets aren't real, all this stuff, Bills division, all this bullshit. If we win, the hype is going to be just as absurd, just in the opposite direction. So I'm nervous for this game. I know a lot of people are pumped up to go to this game. I don't know how you get about Jets games, but I get nervous. Like, of course, pumped, but the feeling before kickoff, like you get that, you kind of get your head a little bit, and you really start to think about the season and all that stuff. So
I used to get nervous so much, but the fact
I might throw up.
It's sad. I'm sad to say it, but in recent years, some years I was rooting for the tank and stuff. It's been so many years since I really got nervous about games. 2015, I was nervous about games. I was nervous as hell that week 16 game or week 17 game against the Bills at the end of the 2015 season, which you were at. But I am a little bit nervous for this one just because this season means a lot. In terms of score prediction, I will say 27-24 Jets.
24. The Bills, I don't know, man. I think the Bills are going to score a little bit less just because I think the Jets held them less than 24, at least actually in both matchups, right? Or somewhat near 24. And if the Jets are going to have more ball control with this in this game with Aaron Rodgers going to be able to run the ball consistently, pick up first downs, I don't think the Bills are going to have the opportunity to score, that many points. So for me, I'm going to say 24-16 Jets. Walk out of the stadium, Kyle, the level of excitement after that. Because like you said, like I get the excitement, and I've been excited for this game for so long. I know at the game, pulling in excitement, eating all that stuff, excitement. But like sitting there for the national anthem and that kickoff, like my stomach's gonna drop. And this is, like you said, the first time I've been legitimately nervous for a game since, like you said, 2015. And you've had some glimpses of it, when you have a rookie quarterback. I don't know how you feel about it, especially when you back a guy. Okay, you want that rookie to really hit. You want Zach Wilson to really hit, so you're nervous for him. But in terms of the expectations of this year, we're trying to make a Super Bowl run. And I've never had I've never really had that feeling. Even in the 2010s like that, like you still have Mark Sanchez, so it could happen. But realistically, in those years, was I expecting to get there? No. And in the playoffs, those years, was there a possibility of getting there? Of course, I was nervous for those games. But in terms of going into a year, like this is fucking huge, man. Like it starts Monday, so I'm just so many mixed emotions right now in terms of going into that game. But I'm excited for it. I'm excited to break it down. I'm excited to be there with you, see Jan there, see whoever else we're seeing there, Kyle. But the season that we've been waiting however many months, what is it, 7 months at the end of it, from about January, February till this point now. So it's going to seem like a really quick 4 or 5 months, the rest of the season. But this one's literally like, I'm thinking about the nerves on that kickoff and my hands are sweating right now. So
wow,
let's get into it. But let me say, Allen's on the cover of Madden without Dable. He's a dead man walking. Oh yeah, just quickly on the side here, Kyle. I don't know if you saw the Madden cover, but I'm pretty sure in the Madden cover, like they can't even get that shit right, and like part of his face mask was missing. But nonetheless,
wow. No, I didn't notice that.
Nonetheless, 20. What did I say? 24-16 Jets.
Kyle,
you're going 27. What do you say? 27.
27-24. Field goal game, I think.
27-24. Oh my god, I don't know if I'm able to handle like shootouts with the Jets this year. But we appreciate everybody. Sorry for making a little bit of a abbreviated stream, but I got to run. Appreciate you.